Happy Father's Day. A bunch of you have been dads. A bunch of you still are. Many of you have, well, all of us have a biological father, but not all of us have had a dad. I'm one that didn't have a dad. Didn't know how to deal with that. Every now and then someone will say, you talk about your childhood, I never hear about a man, because there wasn't one. So I would spend my summers on my mother's cousin's farm, and she had a husband, and that was the closest I got to having a wonderful male figure in my life. And he was wonderful, and that was good. And so as I was growing up, I was going, boy, everyone around me has this man in their lives, and I don't have a man in my life. But as I went into various experiences, Mom did have a number of men friends, of really friends, and they were really good people, and that was useful. So I started making a list, so-and-so, well, he's that part of being a dad, and so-and-so, well, he's that part of being a dad. So I had about 7 or 8 different guys, and they were the different parts of being a dad in my world. And that's sort of weird. But there was that longing for that deep connection. No one in here understands that, right? And so the way I dealt with it was to pay attention to this thing that's in the Christian tradition, where the guy that everyone studies, this Jesus guy, prayed to his daddy. He said, Abba, Daddy. I'm going, what's this about? Who is it that he's connecting with, that he calls Daddy? And so I started exploring that and trying to see if I could connect with that daddy guy. And I grew up in a time when Perry Como sang Our Father every now and then, and the whole family would melt because he was singing the Our Father, or the Ave Maria, or any of those things. And so I learned that song, and for me it was a song more than a prayer, but it was a song that began to get in touch with that daddy stuff a little bit. And slowly but steadily, I came to understand that not just the father presence, but later I realized even the true mother presence, because as I came into adulthood, I realized the woman who raised me didn't know how to be a mom. She did the best she could, but she didn't know how. And I realized neither the mother nor the father has to be a person. And in fact, in reality, our true mother-father never has been a person. The person on the planet has been the best possible local representative. So, when we talk about Father's Day, it's always been kind of a weird day for me. This guy showed up when I was 13 and declared he was my father, and I went, I don't think so. I've already got all this other stuff going on. You're not the guy, right? But I was expected to send him things for Christmas and birthdays and Father's Day. So it was a very strange kind of a And I'm guessing there's a few people in the room that have that same kind of around today. Maybe? Yeah. And yet there is still that understanding that the Father is alive and well. Whether it's in this person that was the best possible representative in the moment, or whether it's in the presence of the all that is in some way. Now, other cultures don't do this thing. First of all, most cultures on the planet don't even know who the father of the child is and don't care. Isn't that interesting? It's the mother's brother or the grandparents who are responsible for providing what we lay on the father. Now, empire culture is a little different because our culture grew out of herders who were very, very careful to make sure the bull and the cows were clearly identified. And the same thing among people. So it was a whole different way of thinking, and the father figure was, knowing who the father was so important that if a girl couldn't prove that she was a virgin going to marriage, she might get stoned, right? And it's still happening today in some parts of the world. Still, that recognition that the fathering process is a necessary part of growing up, is present in every culture, everywhere. Now, this particular country is, well, we're weird. Most of the world that honors fathers is Catholic, and America is predominantly Protestant, okay? In the Catholic world, the father is honored on St. Joseph's Day, at the vernal equinox. It's actually March 19th. So if you're in Europe or you're in Mexico and they're honoring fathers, it'll be March 19th. But we chose the solstice. Isn't that interesting? We chose, the third Sunday in June, which is sometimes actually the solstice day. And we're saying that it's not about life coming forth, it's about life in its maturity and its full blossom. And that's part of why the roses was an interesting reading for today. So if you go to Europe today, they'll know I have no idea what we're talking about. Right? Those of you who are hopping on a plane this afternoon. But on the day that they honor St. Joseph, what they are honoring is not someone that they think was the biological father. They're honoring the person who provided the fathering presence. Isn't that nice? It's a totally different way of looking at it. And so I'd like, on this day, for you to think about who provided the fathering presence in your life. It could be your biological father, it could be your stepdad, it could be an adopted father, it could be a foster parent, or it could be, as in my case, a little bit of my cousin, a little bit of my uncle, a little bit of this guy, and a little bit of that guy, who provided different kind of fathering experiences. Yeah. And when we start thinking about that, then we might think that some of these quotes that we read about fathers actually might apply in our life, right? And so I've sprinkled quotes around the room, and if anyone feels inspired to share one of the quotes that they have, this would be nice to have you do so. This would be a good time. Anyone like to stand up and read the quote I gave you? Ray.
It doesn't matter who my father was, it matters who I remember he was. And Sexton.
Isn't that, hang on, that's kind of where I'm going, isn't it? Yeah. And it's who I remember he was. Even if there had been a man in my house growing up, I certainly learned this about my mom. If I remembered her this way, my life was not going to go very well. But if I remembered her this way, then my life began to come together in a whole new way. So it doesn't matter who he was or even how he was. What matters is what we remember. Please.
A father is neither an anchor to hold us back nor a sail to take us there, but a guiding light whose love shows us the way.
Marvelous, right? This is not someone who is here to keep us from being who we are. And this is not someone who's going to carry our lives forever. I know everyone in this room knows that, but unfortunately not everyone in our culture knows that, right? But they do provide that guiding light. And one of those quotes out there is about how they are rather than what they do or say. Who has that one?
Well, I have one, I'm not sure.
Oh, well, let's try it anyway.
My father will leave me nothing to do, a young Alexander the Great.
Right? So he had to come up with something of his own, so he went out and conquered the world. Yes?
Ruth didn't know she picked the perfect one for me. His heritage to his children, which there were 12, there's 12 of us, wasn't words or possessions, which is true. He's a quiet man. We didn't have a lot. We had lots of land, but we didn't. But an unspoken treasure, the treasure of his example as a man and a father. He was so wonderful. And Mom and Dad had 7 of their own. When they couldn't have any more, they went out to other countries and adopted 5 more from different countries. That's a father.
Yes, a fathering presence. Now, and that's beautiful for Laura Lee, and the guy who said that was Will Rogers' kid. So wonderful, wonderful parallel there. Someone else. Yes, Doug.
My father didn't tell me how to live, he lived. and then you watch him do it.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Right? When any of us lives fully, we make a huge difference in the lives around us. Colin and then Judy.
My father is more than 100 schoolmasters.
Right? A truly present father is far better than, and that's a British, so that's part of why I had Colin read it. But, you know, these are, in the time that was written, it was normal for a kid to be sent away at 7 for public school, to be boarding school, what we call boarding school, and come home only on the holidays, and, you know, often until they were in their 20s. The only times they would be with their parents were on holiday. Yeah, thank you.
I believe that what we become depends on what our fathers teach us at odd moments, when they aren't trying to teach us. We are formed by little scraps of wisdom.
Right? If you think about the people who have fathered you, it wasn't when they were sitting down and giving you the fatherly lecture. It was when they were dealing with whatever. You know, there's a series of TV ads for foster parenting, or radio ads. I love the radio ones, because you hear this kid's voice. Oh, yeah, first you hear the dad. Oh, it was terrible. I mean, it rained, and then the barbecue didn't light, and then I slipped and fell, and, you know, and da-da-da-da-da. And the kid's voice comes out. Oh, it was so cool. It was raining, and we had to do this, and we had to do that, and then Dad slipped, and it was so fun, and he, you know. And the line is, you don't have to be perfect to be a parent. Thank you so much. That was lovely. Another one? Yes.
Well, it's how this is framed, so it would apply to me. My father gave me the greatest gift anyone could give another person. He believed in me, and there were many father figures in my life who did miraculous things and made me who I am.
So anyone who has been fathering us generally is someone who is supportive, protective, inviting us to be who we are and believing in us. And many of us grew up not feeling believed in. So what I would encourage you to do is think of someone, somewhere, and on Father's Day, if only on no other day, at least on Father's Day, think of someone who believed in you and include them in the Father of who and what you are. Yes?
Being a daddy's girl is like having permanent armor for the rest of your life.
Yes! Yeah, I used to envy my friends who were daddy's girls because I could see they knew who they were and how the world worked, and they could make things happen in their own being and in the world around them because of that. And I had to figure it all out. But I assume in some lifetime somewhere I got the experience because I could relate to it. But thank you so much for sharing that one. Yes, yes. Another one. Yes.
By the time a man realizes that maybe his father was right, he usually has a son who thinks he's wrong.
All of us who have adult children are familiar with this phenomenon. Right. And yet one more. I think there's two more out there.
I got a little short one. When I can talk. My dad taught me how to drive in a Jeep, and I was 12 years old, and a few months later I said, "Why does the Jeep go much faster when you drive?" And he says it has more than one gear.
Thank you. All right. Someone else had another slip of paper. Yes.
I'm going to read his too, because he doesn't want to stand up. He adopted a role called being a father so that his child would have something mythical and infinitely important, a protector. That's from Tom Wolfe, the American novelist. A father's a treasure, a brother's a comfort, a friend is both. That's from Benjamin Franklin.
All right. So we're beginning to look now at the archetypal father, okay? The father is a comfort, and the father is the protector, and the brother, there's a comfort, and the friend is both, right? And he took on the role of father to provide that. We have that, all of us have in us all of the archetypes of all of humanity, good, bad, and ugly. And many of us living in this culture at this time have tended to veer toward the bad and ugly instead of the good. The archetype of the loving father is in us, and we can find it. No matter what else has happened, we can find that. The archetype of the unloving father is what we often have to deal with in our political world, and that's okay. Because we can deal with that too when we call on the loving father that is in us. Now, if we look at mythology, quote mythology, we call this body of explanatory story, myth, and then we turn the word myth into lie, right? Not so. Most of the body of myth out there were actually describing experiences held either in the physical or in the inner world. And they're explanations of what's going on in the world around us. So if we look at the body of myth, say for the Native Americans of the Pacific Northwest, we will find the archetype of father and the archetype of mother portrayed as different animals, different critters in the world around us. And so if we see those critters, then we will remember that archetype, right? And they will remind us that it's living in us. If we're in Africa, we'll have a different set of stories that have to do, well, if you're with a Dogon, the mythical world is a world of stars and beings from the stars. But if you're in some of the other nations of Africa, it might be the lion as the father figure, and you can't help but think of the musical The Lion King and the role that Simba plays in that, holding up his child and then being that nurturing, protective presence. And if we look at the Greek mythology, there's Zeus. And Zeus is both. He's both the good one and the not so good one. And that's okay. One of the things about the Greek archetypes that is unusual in other worlds that I'm familiar with in the stories is that they are far more human in the sense of having far more complexity of character than in the mythical stories of other cultures. So something to explore. I know almost everyone here has read Joseph Campbell's works and is familiar with this concept that we live by these stories. All right? So one of the things that has helped me when I was trying to fill in those gaps was to read stories and then adopt some of the qualities in the story for me. And that's part of what they're for, right? We can access these archetypes. I have, one of the things that I encourage some of the students that I work with to do is, if they're not happy with the parentage that they had, to go ahead and look at what other parents they might have had, and if they were perfect, what would they have been, and experience that. And every now and then someone will come, but I don't have any idea what a good parent would be. And I go, so you never read Little House in the Big Woods? Or Little House on the Prairie? You never read Little Women? You never read, so you can go back into these books and these stories. And if they don't, if it isn't in your life experience, you can use what I call vicarious experience of the stories, or other people's experiences. They share their stories. Ooh, that's cool. I can imagine having had that experience in my life. So fathering is something, because it's an inner experience, is not something we have to expect or lay on or demand from or compare and evaluate and judge another person around. Oh, that makes life much easier. They don't have to carry the baggage of my need for a father. How nice. And I don't have to carry the baggage of being upset at them because they didn't act like a father. That makes my life even better. So I invited you to share some things on our altar today. And if you would like to get up and explain something on your altar, we have a couple more minutes and just a minute or so about whoever is being represented here. And please, who would like to get up and share something about what's being represented on this table and the person? All right. Sally the extrovert.
Well, I thought about a couple of different things, and one is I found this father photo. I think it's my dad when he's probably 10, 1930, and I realized he's a young man, he's a young boy. He's not my father here. He's vulnerable, impressionable, and whatever he learned at this age is what he brought forth and continued to bring forth. And much of it was wonderful. A couple of things, oh yeah, man, I could spank him bad right now. But I loved my daddy, okay? There's no question about the fact I loved this person who he became. That's my dad. Woohoo!
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
This is me and my father when at my first wedding, and he danced with me, the only time he ever danced with me. He was a very serious man. And the things I remember most about my father was integrity. He would go to extraordinary extremes to uphold what he believed, because he came from the Holocaust and America saved him. He believed in America, and he would fight corruption because he couldn't otherwise, because he was indebted to America. And so he taught me to stand up for what I believe.
Thank you. Yes, that's lovely. Any others care to share? All right.
This is my daddy over here.
A little louder, please.
Okay. He's about 5 years old, I believe. His grandparents homesteaded property in California from England, and this is when he first came from England to America. And he's a cute little guy. Just think of how much he's done since. He's gone now, but still.
Yes. You can do this.
This is my dad's I Ching book. So, to thank my mother, he's such a wonderful father. It's funny, when I moved out to Oregon, I hadn't seen him in a little while, and I made him this, he was a rubber ducky kind of guy. We knew that about him. He was rather, man from the rest of the world, but
A little louder, please.
oh, sorry. I made him this bathrobe that he came and tried it on, and it was, he was just swimming in it like a little kid. It's so cute that my mental image is back to the first you said it. They're so larger than life to us that I had no idea. He was only 5'10" in my mind's eye. He was such a large presence. I noticed that he was just swimming in it like a little kid. And I was like, oh, I can take it. He was like, no, it's fine. So, but he had this all-consuming, not all-consuming, but ever-present presence that enveloped the entirety of reality around him. And to this day, I still feel that. And I brought this because I still talk to him every day. That I ask his I Ching a question, and he explains it to me how it applies to whatever I'm dealing with, or it's actually his voice I hear in my head. So in a way, supposed to bring something I actually brought my dad.
Please, Bruce.
Well, I didn't get it up there in time, but I was able to spend time yesterday with my 96-year-old dad, who is as sharp as I am. He is a veteran from Guam, Marine, And last year, he was inducted, he's been a coach, high school football coach for 50-something years, and a teacher. Last year, he was inducted into a Hall of Fame, and I took him down to it. And on the way home, he said that I guess my life was validated. The number of people that came up to him and thanked him for the things he did, even the people he didn't coach, the people he had in school, came up and thanked him for the lessons they taught him in school. And it was just really heartwarming to hear your dad say that he feels his life is validated.
Beautiful, beautiful. So there are roses on the altar, and the white roses are for people whose dads are no longer on the planet, and the red roses are for those who can still visit with their parents, their father. So you're more than welcome to take them when we conclude this service. So I hope you will. That's a tradition in England, I'm told. White rose in the lapel if your father has passed away, and a red one if he's still with you. All right, so any more of those little slips of paper around? I don't think we heard every one of them. Did we? All of them? I'm impressed. Very good. Thank you all so much for doing this with me. It was a delight to be able to share and to deepen our understanding of Father, and happy Father.